Welcome to today's episode of What to Say and How to Say It. Today, we're going to be talking about living with the wounded spouse. And if I had dramatic music, I'd insert it there because, whoa, that's a thing.
Wait a minute. Bum, 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 bum.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. Yes. And we don't mean to mock the wounded spouse or those living with the wounded spouse, but it's a thing. There's lots of drama involved. It's not easy. It's a rodeo. And it's one with horses that or worse yet, bulls that are. So we're going to give you some ideas today, 3 things to walk away with on how to deal with this in a way that you can stay on the horse you got, because that's the one you got. And I want to toss something out to you today. If you go over to our website, greaterimpactcouples.org, you can snag our new marriage assessment. You just take that little quiz and it'll tell you how much trouble you may be in and potentially what to do about that.
Is this where you hand out my number?
You know what? We'll do that at the end. For those of you in Texas, we can get you in touch with Kyle because he can help you with your particular horse as well. And we're not talking about horses, we're actually talking about marriage. But yes, there's things with that. And if you are in Texas, be sure to let us know when you reach out because Kyle's a genius. And we do have people that reach out to us because of the podcast. But we do have a marriage assessment. There are 20 positives to every 1 negative in a healthy relationship. My guess is you don't know what half of those things are. I know I did not, but there's data behind a bunch of them. Are you implementing those in your relationship? And if you're struggling, well, let us help because we know how to help. We have a great turnaround rate with couples. So let's dig in today. We're talking about living with the wounded spouse. I'm here with our favorite licensed professional counselor, Kyle Hargrove. I want to also point out that nothing we say or do here today is therapy because, hello, you have to actually sit down and process your stuff. This is pretty one-sided. This is Kyle's, in my opinion, based on things that we've seen, done, watched, read, whatever. He's mostly seen and done a lot of this. And we want to just encourage you with some ideas that maybe will potentially keep you out of a counselor's office. So living with a wounded spouse. And we're not talking about just the married, like, because everybody's got wounds. We're talking about people that are living with somebody where it's not just your run-of-the-mill everyday, like, as if that's a thing. But you know what I'm talking about. There's more to it here. There's a depth. This is not a skin knee. There's like been a train wreck at some point in this person's life, and they're not getting over it real well. Would you say that's probably the accurate assessment there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I have an opening response to your opening comments.
The sound on that was that,
That's a
shaking your mouth
horse,
like a
in case
horse. Yeah.
in case it didn't come through.
Something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that horses don't even
Yeah.
do that, but they make that
Yeah.
noise. But
Yeah.
yeah, the whole shaky shake.
Yeah, you talk about the horse you're on. And it's really a phenomenal word picture. Because it reminds me we're heavily involved here in Texas with rodeo
Mm-hmm.
and horse competitions, and we also take our food truck to rodeos starting about now and working through the early fall. And what you don't want to what you don't want to sit on is rough stuff. Okay, that's the animal. We just want to sit in the stands and watch it, enjoy it, while
Mm-hmm.
somebody else
Yeah.
mounts that animal and tries to ride it.
Yeah.
Okay, what we want is we want more the cowboy that's chasing the rough stock or whatever the case might be on the horse that is saddled and trained and is their good buddy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what we're describing when we talk about somebody who walks through every day with a heavy, heavy wound or series of wounds or whatever from the past
Mm-hmm.
that surpass even the beginning of the relationship you're in now. And they get thrown off a lot.
Yeah.
They find themselves in the mud and the dirt with broken things. And as their partner and spouse, you get to deal with that as well.
Yes. That's a thing.
And it's
And
not what you signed up for. It's not what you expected. I mean, we could go through all of the phrases that people use when they say,
mhm,
this is not what I saw coming.
right.
Go through all of the phrases, but it's what it is now. And
Mhm.
what are we going to do about
Well, and we feel like a lot of people say, well, I married, they're a different person than they were when I married them. It's like, no, they were just on their best behavior.
it?
And and they've let their guard down and you didn't hold them to a higher standard of living, or being. And now you're trying to get them in the trailer and they're like bucking like nobody's business and having nothing to do with it. And so like, what do you do with that? Now it's a horse analogy, but it really does fit with marriage because, you're wanting to go on vacation with your family to visit your dad before he dies and your spouse is like not having it. What's that about? So you've got real life situations that affect you because your spouse has these issues. And so there's ways of dealing with that. And you've got a list of them today for us that are, pretty doggone useful. That first one, let's get it out of the gate and start talking about it.
Before that,
Yeah.
I'd like to do a pre-list of one item,
Okay.
whatever it is, whether it's previous emotional abuse, verbal abuse, physical or sexual, whatever trauma the wounded person has experienced in their previous life. You cannot fix it.
I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah. You can be a part of that healing, but you cannot fix it. You
Mhm.
cannot be the savior where these issues are concerned
Yeah.
because they don't involve you
Uh-huh.
in their genesis, in the initial trauma. They involve you now because you live this life with that person.
Yeah. I have a client who is on her third marriage. All three of these marriages, it's basically the same guy. He's, an alcoholic, can't keep a job, comes from an abusive home. Turns out she was the one, bringing home birds with broken wings, stray cats, so really there's something in her that's attracting, trying to rescue, save, whatever. And she just came to that realization of, oh, what is it in me what am I trying to fix
Yeah.
that I keep, reaching out to that stuff? So that's a really good point.
Well, and knowing that, if you know that prior to, you see the need and the necessity to not get into that relationship on a permanent basis until these issues have been addressed.
Mm,
And I know that sounds harsh and it sounds mean and it sounds ugly, but when you see the further damage that occurs
yeah.
in both individuals when they have not been addressed, and then they rear their ugly heads,
Hmm.
then you understand, and especially if you've been a part of that,
Yeah.
from the standpoint of watching these things happen around you and going, what in the world is happening and why? And I wish I had known this. Not that
Hmm.
you wouldn't have moved forward with that relationship, but that you would have laid some better groundwork prior to doing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. No,
So,
that's just wisdom. But we don't see it, and we can't fix them. That's not our job. And if we're looking at marrying somebody that's in that state, like hold on a minute, like give it at least 2 years. Listen to your family members; they see stuff you don't, because you won't fix yourself by marrying somebody else that needs fixing.
that's wrong.
Yeah.
So that being said, the first of the three items I have today, they're all very simple. We're talking about a very complicated situation with a very simple to-do list, for the individual who is yoked with the wounded
Yeah.
person. Um, remember, simple and easy aren't the same thing.
Ah, fair.
Simple is the concept, easy is about the application. Simple or complicated, easy or hard. And sometimes the simplest concepts are the most difficult to carry out and apply. So, drum roll. First item on the agenda today is listen louder.
Hmm.
I used to
I love
love to
that.
watch the expressions on my sixth graders' faces when I was teaching school. I would say, you need to listen louder. But
Yeah.
at least you heard me say it. Okay. But listening louder is just listening with more intent,
Mm.
listening intentionally rather than just listening because it's respectful to do so. So when I'm listening louder, I'm listening to hear important, specific nuggets that allow me to piece together parts of this puzzle. And when we listen louder, we can be looking for specific things like specific needs that our partner has.
Mhm.
That if we can be a part of the healing, this is where it happens. We meet those
Right.
needs if it's possible.
Well,
Right?
and don't you think validating their experience is also like that active listening, I hear you, see you, understand you piece that people, everybody, whether you're wounded or not, is just starving for.
Yep.
So without listening loudly, if you will,
Mhm.
which means assertively, intentionally, we're not going to be able to say back to them, this is what you're really saying.
Yeah.
Am I getting you?
Right. There are two parts to listening, or actually two words, and I think Gottman has some stuff about this in their materials. And I actually transpose the words that there's hearing and there's listening.
Mhm.
And hearing is a biological reaction
Right.
to variables in the atmosphere.
Mhm.
And it happens whether you're awake or asleep, whether you want it to or not.
Yep.
Listening requires intent. Listening is on purpose. And just because you're hearing doesn't mean you're listening.
Amen. So true.
So to pick out these needs and see where they're coming from, because there's going to be evidence. There are going to be clues and tips if we're listening now. Also, one of the things we'll see, and we don't just have to listen for this. Sometimes we bear the brunt of it, and that's triggers. The
Mm.
things that set off the emotions and ultimately the behaviors of a wounded person. And oftentimes, it's like we're kicking tripwires all the time,
Mhm.
um, and we don't even know it. Suddenly we're in the middle of a situation that we don't even want to be a part of, but we want to offer something soothing to the person that we love, and unknowingly, it was us that kicked the tripwire, that triggered the situation by something we said or something we did. And this is an element of walking on eggshells.
Mhm.
See how I stuck that in there?
Yeah,
That chill
yeah,
thing?
we have that PDF. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah.
So I have a question around this because people think that if they're going to listen well and validate somebody, that also means agreement, and it's not. So can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah. I mean, that's just the simple rules of validation. And one of the top 3 or 4 things we find out when we're talking about validation is you don't have to agree to validate. What you say? I don't have to agree with you to validate? No, not at all. All you're doing when you validate, technically, is you're saying, I hear you, I hear what it is, I'm listening, and so I hear what it is that is bothering you,
Mm-hmm.
and I can understand why.
Mm-hmm.
Is it being heard?
Yeah.
I don't feel heard. How often do you hear that one?
Yeah. It's
I don't
huge.
feel heard. Yeah. Well, maybe the reason your spouse doesn't feel heard is because you're not validating their emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Validation is not about actions. That's affirmation. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Validation is about feelings.
I get a lot of pushback about that term. And if you look it up in the dictionary, you got to go all the way down to Oxford's number 4 to get what we're talking about here. Because the rest of it's like, it's true. It's a thing that's true. And blah, blah, blah. Like the first 3 definitions all talk about non-psychological application. This is valid, therefore it's true. And it's like, it's a different word in relationship speak. In psychology, it's a different word. And so we have to point that out, that it is actually a relationship technology, if you will, that makes everything better.
Yes. Yeah. And some of the Gottman research goes back and says that when people feel like they've been heard, their requests for connection were met with interest and compassion.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. That's emotional.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm going to validate your emotions with an emotional response.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have compassion for you. Don't have to agree.
Yep. Love that.
Yeah. So one way that we can be a part of healing for the person that we love the mostest is to listen louder. Another way that we can do that, everybody's going to go, when they hear this, is to set boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And to set boundaries for ourselves and for the
Yep.
relationship. Okay. So again, what are boundaries for? What do they do?
Yeah, they protect us and they protect the relationship.
Thank you. Boundaries are about protecting
Mm-hmm.
either what's inside from what's outside,
Mm-hmm.
protecting myself from getting outside, you know.
Yep.
Yeah. So these boundaries are critical. They protect me, they protect the relationship. I know that uh, when I was working with a lot of dissociative clients,
Mm.
clients with the real bad disorders, it was imperative at that point that I say to them in our first meeting, I'm going to set a boundary that says this. It's going to sound ugly, but please hear me out. If it ever comes down to a situation in this setting where I have to protect me or I have to protect you, I'm choosing me every time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, these were people that were prone to self-mutilation and self-harm and sometimes
Yeah.
violence. So I had to make that boundary clear
Mm-hmm.
from the get-go.
Yep.
In much the same way, when I'm dealing with someone who is wounded and writhing literally in emotional pain, I have to set the same kind of boundaries. Now, it's not that I'm going to let you go and die or anything like that.
Right.
It's just that I'm not going to allow the behaviors that come out of this situation to harm me.
Yeah.
And this is how I'm going to do it. Certain behaviors, they're not okay.
Yeah.
Certain
So,
things, go ahead, please.
I love this because, it's putting your own air mask on. It's that piece of it. And then, we're talking a little bit about horses today. My trainer is like, he's incredible. He's well known in his field. And one of the things that he's very adamant about is you don't treat your horses. You don't give horses food with your hands because he has grandkids, because there's so many clients of his that are grandmothers and grandfathers and parents. And he's like, if you want a horse that does not injure one of your children accidentally, you cannot do that because you just never know when. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And so that's a piece of it. And then he takes that all the way to the, when you're with me, you're on my time. You can eat on your own time. So I'm not going to hand graze you. I'm not going to give you treats to come to me. Like we're on the job, and it's a mutual respect kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that, and this is just it causes you a lot of work when you treat your horses. And I've got some brilliant riders that I'm around, and some of them treat and some of them don't. But it is a lot more work with the horses when they're looking for food from you. And I think and I do the same thing with my dogs. We start off with treats, but then we stop with that because I want respect. I don't want you to look at me as a source of food and that's why you obey me. I want you to look at me because you and I have a relationship.
There you go.
Yeah. And so when we're looking at boundaries inside of a marriage, I'm going to put my own air mask on because I know that I'm of no use to you here if I throw myself under the bus and serve to the point of near death, right?
Mhm.
Trying to make you happy, which is impossible, by the way.
Right.
Yeah.
And,
So
and and
that's it.
do you know the source usually of getting into that position?
Hmm.
Trying to fix it.
Yes. To your point at the beginning.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. Trying to
exactly.
be the fixer of the situation is what usually gets you bitten.
Hmm. Yeah. Let me just make you feel better.
Yeah, or causes you to run out of oxygen and be of no use.
Right. Yeah. That doesn't work.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's a rough one. One of the rules that I have in relationships is I do not play passive aggressive games.
Oh, amen.
I
Yeah.
do not
Tell
play.
the truth.
I will call it out every time
Hmm.
if I know it to be true.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
My son's
gameplay
wife,
is not okay.
I love my son's wife. She's like, I got this extra daughter thing going. And one of the things I love most about her is I know 100% where I stand with her. Like she's told me, hey, I didn't like it when you ABC'd. And I'm like, thank you so much for telling me. It makes me respect her so much when she can bring something to my attention that I did that she didn't like instead of just keeping it quiet. Because
Mhm.
she wants me in her life, right? So there's some guardrails with like I've never been a grandparent before. Like I don't know what I'm doing. So there's not all these issues or whatever, but when there's something and it hasn't happened much, but I just appreciate the fact that I know that if I do something, she's going to let me know how that works in her family, or if it doesn't. And so I trust her. I'm not walking on eggshells in that space because I know what's what's going to happen there, right? It changes the game and it makes the relationship safe. And she's creating that safety for herself and her kids. And I do the same thing. And I don't have people living with me anymore. I have dogs though. And I'm kind of clear about, hey, will you guys not stop paying attention to the dogs when you come over? Just look at me, just
Yeah,
walk right in, ignore everybody because otherwise you're making them terrible and they knock over my grandkids.
yeah.
So if you can't do that, we're gonna have a different discussion here. Um, but yeah, the whole boundaries thing applies like literally everywhere in your life. And if you don't have them, you're the one that loses.
Yeah.
And so is the
And
relationship.
and to speak to the point you just made about your daughter-in-law, it doesn't matter whether it's your child's new spouse, girlfriend,
Yeah.
friend. It doesn't matter if it's the person you choose.
Yeah.
There is always an element of the unknown involved.
Yeah.
You do not know every detail about this person, their previous life, or
Mm,
how they handle certain situations. So if you step in it with them, it's nice that they can say, I just needed to let you know about something.
yeah. Yep.
That type of communication is what we're afraid of because we don't know how it's going to end up. We don't know the outcome. And so we fear it. Therefore, we usually don't do it.
Yeah.
So doing that and knowing how to do it well, it's a pretty hefty skill to have in your toolkit.
I agree. It's a game changer with relationships. You cannot have a healthy relationship without boundaries.
Yeah, screw that. Let's get to the last one then.
All right, bring it on.
It's hard sometimes because in the fight, in the battle with standing beside somebody who is damaged and wounded emotionally, sometimes we get hurt. And then our focus, I'm going to have to name my focus because I need to have conversations with it and I need to call it by name. But I need to tell my focus sometimes you're focusing on the wrong thing. Okay. Because when I get damaged, I focus on me. When I get hurt, I focus on me. I quit focusing sometimes on the big picture
Mhm.
because I like me, and because me doesn't like pain, whether it's physical or emotional.
Right.
And so it's easy for me to run into the corner and protect myself and take care of myself and let the big picture go on in ways that cause bigger problems, down the line. So even though I may have been damaged, I want to continue to be the source of encouragement for healing from a partner, spouse.
Mhm.
And that's, well, how do you do that? It's a series of things, smaller things that are simple things. And let me just give you a few. Reassurance on the regular, reminding your spouse that they are loved and valued and deserving of respect, even if they didn't act that way in
Mhm.
a particular scenario. None of us want to be judged permanently for the things we've
Right.
done temporarily.
Yes.
So that reassurance, validation, like we've talked about, affirmation, like we've talked about, and the boundaries, like we've talked about. These are all pieces and parts of an encouragement to heal. They don't all necessarily feel that way all of the time, but they are. It's kind of like getting a shot. I don't like the way a shot feels. Okay. But I know that I need it and it's going to make me better. And I stand there and take it like a man. That's just tears coming out of one eye,
Yeah.
just two eyes, which is a whole one. So I don't like shots. But being that source of encouragement, I think, is probably the foundational thing that pulls both people in the relationship back to where it started and to where it needs to be. If what you are is a source of additional frustration because you're frustrated, additional pain because you're hurt too,
Hmm.
um, it's not very encouraging.
Yeah.
So this is one, if I could say encourage louder, I would
Yeah.
say it doesn't fit, but that's basically what we're saying.
Hmm.
Work harder to be an encouragement. Put sometimes your own feelings to the side.
Hmm.
There's a time and a place for dealing with those in that relationship, and right now might not be.
Well, and somebody that is seriously wounded isn't capable of helping you heal with your thing. Like you cannot get like you're trying to pour water into a broken pot and expect it to be able to get from point A to point B. That's not possible. So you have to recognize that you're not dealing with somebody who's whole. So those needs that you have within you might need to be met somewhere else with, and I'm not talking about an affair, please, hello. I'm talking about with a good friend, a
Mhm.
therapist, counselor, your coach, somebody that has the capacity to handle what you're going through. And over again, I hear people like, I just need some support going through this because dealing with somebody who's wounded is hard.
Yes,
It's not
is
easy.
exhausting.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so there's that.
there is that. Taking care of yourself really matters for sure. Yeah.
Well, that was actually going to be my parting shot today.
All
Take
right,
care
bring it
of
on.
yourself.
Hmm.
Take care of yourself. You know, there may be the need for you to talk to somebody about you
Hmm.
without divulging everything in your relationship or about your partner. There may be the need for you to seek some healing of your own that is set apart from this relationship situation.
Yep.
So take care of yourself physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. I like to encourage my clients and myself to challenge myself every day somehow in all four of those areas. I don't always make it, I'm not always successful, but stretch myself a little bit further today than I was yesterday
Hmm.
in terms of my mental status, my emotional status, my physical status, and my relationship with God.
Yeah. It's like four posts holding up a table. If you don't put some, if you don't make sure that is all sturdy, if they get wobbly or unstable, then the whole table is not going to be in good shape to hold things up. And we need that for a firm foundation for our relationships. So what we bring to the relationship really matters. And if you're in a relationship with somebody who's wounded, you need like to really take care of yourself because woo, it's not easy. seriously challenging. So I want to give people your contact info again. So Kyle, can you tell us how can we email, website style, get a hold of you if you're in Texas? Where do we go?
You bet. You can find me at headway.co as one of the providers there. You can also find me at helloalma.com. helloalma.com. If you'd like to contact me, just cut the middleman out. It's Kyle Hargrove, LPC at gmail.com.
Yeah. So if you're in Texas, start there with him. Just hit rewind, grab those. And if you're not in Texas, hop over to our website, greaterimpactcouples.org, and take the assessment. And we'll get you in touch with some help either way. We'll get you moving forward in your relationship because you don't have to suffer or stay stuck when you're dealing with a wounded spouse. Thanks for chiming in. Be sure to listen to our next episode on dealing with conflict and improving your relationship, deeper connection with God, yourself, and other people. Can't wait to see you grow. We'll talk soon.